to a third. His drop round at Brands Hatch saw him only 12th and 4th, then P5 at round 4 at Monza, then a win last time out at Indianapolis sees him leading the way. Very consistent, only 2 podiums over this season compared to Bailey Thompson's 3. He's been the man there or thereabouts week in, week out. And as we say, a lot of the time it's actually been from the back of the grid. He's been able to work his way towards the front, no matter what position he's been able to start in. He's always been able to bounce back. He's going to try and win the championship in spectacular form today, though, and that is, of course, his aim. Talking of aims, Jack Southfield, after getting his 50-meter swimming badge, is going to look to try and get into the top 3 in the championship standings. And, of course, that is a fairly feasible feat with the absence of Bailey Thompson, second place in the championship. The Aston Martin V8 Vantage, Jack Southfield, should be able to work his way into the top 3, flying the flag for the Gingers and trying to make them proud out on the track. Following along, Guillaume Hamling, the Luxembourger is what we settled on, I think, for Guillaume Hamling last time at Indianapolis. The Lamborghini, Bow Motorsport, of course, his season has looked pretty good as well, pretty consistent, similar to Sir Smokey's, and that is, of course, attributed as to why they are only separated by 5 points in the championship. 4th, 5th, 4th in a DNF at Brands Hatch, then 1st place at Monza, 6th place last time out at Indianapolis. Guillaume Hamling is a driver, again, similar to Sir Smokey, that is there week in, week out. Doesn't matter where you put him, he will be towards the front and will negotiate his way around the circuit as efficiently as possible. To round off his first lap in qualifying, though, working his way through the famous Blanchimont corner on the run in towards the bar-stop chicane. Bit of a kink, and then pretty much as soon as the car's straight, you're on the anchors, dipping the weight towards the front of the car, and that Lamborghini should be fairly agile through this slow speed section. Got to get your foot on the floor, though, utilising the traction control available in these GT3 cars. Run to the line. What is it going to be for Guillaume Hamling? It's a 2:17.627. That doesn't see him to the top of the time sheets, because at the moment Dominic Aligna is leading the way, 2:17.4. Jack Southfield with a 2:17.8 for the young Briton, and Guillaume Hamling unfortunately invalidating that previous lap time, so we won't see him take to the time sheets at the moment. Here is Slav, the Estonian in the Tiger Racing Team Mercedes, the car that we've come to know and love all season long, of course. Looking across the Estonian season, it is a lackluster. I say that, actually. He's P10 in the championship and looking to solidify that. 2.5 points back on Chris Davis, who is a further 3.5 points back on Conor Courtney. Race winner, of course. Race 1 at Brands Hatch. So a lot of prestigious talent up and down the field for the Sim Racing Collective here on the PC ACC series. Well, yeah, it's only our 2nd season. We have attracted a good amount of talent, and that does continue and should continue going into season 3, of course, into the new year. 3 years, 3 days until Christmas. That is, yeah, it's not long enough to go. So it's kind of scary. Good evening, of course, to those of you in the UK joining us in the YouTube chat over on JP Broadcasting. Do, of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell for notifications, like the stream, comment, and boost the algorithm as best we can. Looking for onwards and upwards into the new year for JP Broadcasting as a company, boasting a lot of sim racing talent, both in the broadcasting side of things and, of course, on the racing side of things. We go to pretty much any discipline you can think of: radicals, open wheels, GTs, whatever tickles your fancy. There is something for each day of the week to try and dip your fingers into all those different pies, and you will be accompanied by a top quality broadcast, I am sure. But yeah, as we say, welcome along, Phil across the pond. Always good to see you joining us in the YouTube chat. You always find a way to be here. So yeah, it's almost when you're not here that we feel a little bit strange. Talking through the timing so far in qualifying, it is still the German of Aligna, only joined us halfway through the season. I believe his debut was at Monza. He tops the timesheets at the moment, 2:17.490. Martin in that McLaren, 2.5 tenths back. Then comes Jack Southfield, Davidson, and Wright, your top 5. Change that though, because Sir Smokey takes to the top of the timesheets by less than a tenth of a second. 73 thousandths goes the Mercedes, and here comes Slav in the other Mercedes, up inside the top 5, still just under a second back off the pole time of the German. A pretty bad job, it must be said, the Estonian, who is again, as I say, on a bid to improve. Ethan Strange in the Team TSRC Aston Martin, up into 7th place provisionally as it stands, but still, of course, about half of this session left to go. Ethan Strange, of course, signed up for the start of this season, has not been able to make the majority of the races. Unfortunately, it is kind of hard to multitask, particularly as a man and particularly as a uni student. It's kind of hard to drive the sim and have a pot noodle in your hand at the same time. For Ethan Strange, it is a strange predicament for him to be in. And pulling over to the right-hand side on up the camel straight to abort his lap and back to the pit lane. Jack Southfield, 4th place at the moment, trying to improve upon that and get himself up maybe onto the front row of the grid to propel himself, as we say, up inside the top 3 in the championship. Only 2.5 points back off Bailey Thompson, who is... actually, no, he's not. Not Bailey Thompson. He is... I do apologise. I believe... okay, there was an ad block in the screen of the time tower. 69 points for Jack Southfield. I'm sure he's not going to be too disheartened as to his points tally so far in this season. 9 points back off Guillaume Hamling, who's a further 2.5 points back off Bailey Thompson. So all Jack Southfield has to do pretty much is finish inside the top 5 to solidify that place and get himself, as we say, into that top 3 in the championship. Dominic Aligna in the Audi trying to pit the Mercedes of Sir Smokey back to P2 and promote himself onto provisional pole. Still 6 minutes left, so still a couple of laps left in this qualifying run if you do want to improve your lap time, if you do want to try and push the limit, and if you do want to qualify as high as possible. While Spa is a circuit that can be quite easy to overtake, it does help to qualify as best as possible, particularly maybe on 2nd, 3rd and 4th to get the slipstream up the camel straight towards Lake Com on the opening lap. With 6 minutes left to go, Dominic Aligna rounds the corner. Guillaume Hamlin goes to pole position. Is that going to be pipped by Aligna? Yes, it is, by 1.8 tenths of a second. Of 2:17.137 as it stands sets the benchmark. Guillaume Hamlin is going to have a bit of improvement left to do. Here's Chris Davis, Team Rookie Monsters, the Bentley that we've come to know and love over the course of the last 5 rounds. The last 6 races, of course, we had 2 at the halfway mark of Brands Hatch. In towards the final chicane for him, P15, 4.2 seconds off the 2:17.1 benchmark of Dominic Aligna. On that run to the line, though, of course, he's going to be looking to improve upon that up into P14 as it stands for Chris Davis, rounding off the 7th row of the grid. So Smokey, P1 not too long ago in this session. Championship leader going into it. All he has to do is finish ahead of Guillaume Hamlin. Taking the qualifying order as the race order, while that's not going to be the way it finishes, I am sure it would be Guillaume Hamlin scoring 4 points and Sir Smokey scoring 20. Not quite enough for the Luxembourger to take the championship. By 1 point he would miss out on, so it's going to need a little bit more is Guillaume Hamlin. Both of these guys will want the championship dearly. Both of them is going to want to round off the season with a win, but only one of them can do so. Only one of them can come out on top. It is a shame, though, that we don't have the addition of Bailey Thompson into the mix, because it would mean we've got 3 drivers separated by 5 points. And for me in the commentary booth, that would be a little bit awkward, because I'd have to do the maths and try and focus on 3 different people at once and where they are and do the carrying the ones and all this stuff and malarkey. But it would be good. For an entertainment factor, it would be fantastic. Unfortunately, that has not quite been the case. So we get the lovely other addition, side quest, if you will, of Jack Southfield trying to score enough points to get himself ahead of Bailey Thompson, who unfortunately hasn't got any drop rounds to lean on. His last time out at Indianapolis did see a DNF. So for him, it was suboptimal in the sense that if it had just scored points at Indianapolis, he could use this round now as his drop round and still score enough points maybe to get himself into the championship hunt. Not the championship hunt, but to remain in the top 3 in the championship, basically. Tom Davidson, as it stands, 1.483 seconds off pole position in the very vibrant purple, black and white Porsche. He's looking to improve upon 8th place as it stands. I do love that Porsche. It looks fantastic. And there are a number of really good liveries on the grid this season. This Porsche for sure is one of them. The other one, of course, is Slav Volodya. He's also got one, but of course that's become more of the novelty of that has worn off, I think, over the last couple of seasons. He's got to spice it up, I think. Maybe go for a Zebra next year or whatever. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the Estonian has in store for us. While it does make sense, he does race for Tiger Racing Team. Maybe he needs to change over to Cow Racing Team or something. I don't know. Tom Davidson across the line. It's not an improvement on his time, nor on his... Oh, no, it was an improvement on his time. by about a bit of a second, but not quite valid, unfortunately. Ethan Strange, Team TSRC, representing similar to Jack Southfield in the Aston Martin. The Sim Racing Collective do like their Aston Martins. They do like to represent the British GT car. They could have gone for the Bentley. They could have gone for the McLaren. They settled with the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. Across the line, Ethan Strange, only 10th place. One more lap, two more laps actually in this qualifying session if he doesn't back out of this lap and keeps the pace up of about 0.3 of a second. He can still squeeze in yet another lap after this one if he so wants it. P10 though, of course, for Ethan Strange, as we say, rounding off the fifth row. Starting up over the course of this season, only been able to make this round, as I said, a little bit earlier on, but to get a top 10 on debut is not a bad showing whatsoever. Marcel Hess, though, the German, who again we haven't, I don't think, seen over the course of this season in that Porsche for Hess Motorsport, is having a bit of a tough time running through Puon, or recently named the double gosh, which literally translates to the double left, which... fair enough. It's so literal, but it's just wrong. It's Puon. Similar to how No Name Corner is called No Name, which is ironic because it has 3 names. It's called No Name Corner, which is one of its names. It's got Speaker's Corner, which is another one. And then it's called the Jackie X Corner, which is another one. So it's got, for a corner with no name, it has 3 names, which I just find to be a little bit ironic. And only Spa is the circuit that would change so many corner names so often. I mean, there is about 1 million different corner names for this chicane. Piff Paff Campus. There's been a couple of others I've heard as well. I can't name them off the top of my head. And then we get into Stavelo. Now, some people call this Stavelo 1, and the next right-hander Stavelo 2. I call it Curve Paul Frere, and the one before that, of course, Stavelo 1. But yeah, that is, again, Spa is just a little bit awkward in terms of how it likes to name its corners. Rivage Bruxelles as well, the right-hand off-cambered corner after Malmedy of turn 1. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of turn 8. I think Malmedy is. Hold my breath. I think. But yeah, that is so. Rivage obviously turn 9. There are again a multitude of different ways to call every corner here, and it's interesting to see where different people get their different names from. Conor Courtney, P5 with that lap. Just ahead of Jack Southfield actually, and promoting themselves up inside the top 5. Jack Southfield, here he is. Young Brit on the bid for 3rd in the championship, running his way out to the extremities of the circuit of Curve Paul Frere. Do have to be careful, of course, of that AstroTurf to the left-hand side of the circuit. Can be very, very slippery. We do have dry conditions for this race. We've only had 1 wet race, 2 wet sessions, of course, qualifying and the race at Misano for round number 2. But other than that, we haven't seen any wet races over the course of the last 2 seasons of the PC ACC. Here for the Sim Racing Collective. The checker flag is waved in qualifying, so they get to finish the lap that they are on. Is Jack Southfield on an improvement across the line up to the 2nd row of the grid in P4, but all eyes, it must be said, on Sir Smoggy in that Mercedes, the German on a bid for the championship as it stands behind his championship rival by the extent of around about 0.5 of a second. Virtually nothing in it. Guillaume Hamling into the pit lane cannot respond to the lap that Sir Smoggy puts in. Is it going to be pole? Is it going to be the front row? Is he going to settle for 2nd? Sir Smoggy, the German, on form, it must be said. Dominic Ligner as well out on circuit. Is he going to improve upon his lap time as well? 2 minutes left of the session. We wait for people to finish their final lap times. And again, a lot still does remain to be seen. Even in these latter stages, there are a lot of things left to uncover. And still the 40-odd minute race we have coming up after that for round number 6, race 7 of the Sim Racing Collective season number 2. What a season as it's been, as we say. Through the final corners for Sir Smoggy, got to get the foot down, which the Mercedes is relatively good at, using the full track on the outside. 4 tenths back, Dominic Ligner stretches advantage. Front row for Sir Smoggy, 2nd place, 3.5 tenths back of Dominic Ligner, who gets himself into the 2 minute 16s. Tom Davidson out there, 7th place as it stands. Needs 0.5 second to promote his position. He seems pretty secure for 7th place, but he's always going to want more. The VSRC Porsche through the right, then the left. The Porsche is perfect when it comes to getting the foot down, uses a bit too much track on the exit. And no improvement, unfortunately, for him there. Would have been 3 tenths. Wouldn't have been enough anyway. Quinten van Wingerden, the Dutchman, the AM champion going into this season, promoted to the pros, looking for more. And unfortunately, again, going to have to settle for 11th. Just coming up a little bit short is the Dutchman, which isn't quite often for Dutch people. It must be said, they are rather tall people. Christopher Marston, the Aston Martin, a very nice livery. I do like that. That is awesome. The grey, the black, the blue. the patterns. Looks very tribal. I do like it. Very optimum. Across the line. And it's only P13 for him. Going through then the qualifying order for this race, pole lining up on the right-hand side of the grid and going to that position is going to be Dominic Eligner. Takes pole, 2 minutes 16.9 for the German. He is, of course, 3.5 tenths clear of the championship leader of Sir Smokey, who will join him on the front row of the grid. The top three each take a purple sector each, with Guillaume Hamling taking sector 1. Martin rounds off the second row of the grid with Jack Southfield, your top 5. Conor Courtney will join the young Brit on the third row with Tom Davidson and Slav Volodya, PA. Ethan Strange and Joshua Wright, your top 10 with Quinton Van Wingden, P11. Of course, Wright, I did forget to mention, is pole for the AMS. McCrory P12, Christopher Marston P13 with Tom Marchinek, the championship leader for the AMS, down in P4 and P14 overall. Then comes Chris Davis, Fernando Torres, Hess, Schlattler, Martin Blankensteiner down in P19, way off where he would have wanted to be in this race. Then comes Larson and Wells, P20 and P21 respectively. I think rounding off the 21 car grid that we have got. We are moments away from getting underway for the final 40-minute race of this season. I'm going to take a step away just to have a drink before we get underway for the formation lap.
Seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
What about the night qualifying? Are you worried about that?
No, I think we're ready to put 1 second for the lap.
You look so calm. I mean, I expected you to...
Dominic Eligner leads us underway for the formation lap here for round number 6 of the Sim Racing Collective GT3 Series here on the PC, and here, of course, on Assetto Corsa Competizione. As we say, we've shared a brilliant championship. We said a brilliant season. Last season was something. It set the bar high for any future seasons among that. They say you cannot beat the original. Season 2 is one that for sure is going to get very close indeed. As we say, the championship in the pros still undecided by 5 points. So Smokey, Guillaume Hamling riding up second and third on the grid today. 40 minutes to decide it. The track still optimum. Looking in the AMS, just a quick update if you are only just joining us. Tom Marchinek leads the way by 93 and ahead by 13 points of Martin Blankensteiner. James Wright, of course, there P2 and P3. I did just realise I called him Joshua during the grid sequence, so I do apologise, James. Again, there are a lot of drivers, a lot to keep up with, and when you only get their initial in ACC, it can be a little bit difficult, but maybe I'm just a bad commentator. Who knows? We'll see. Anyway, James Wright, of course, is lining up first for the AMS. There in P10 overall, doing a great job in qualifying, does the Porsche. Relative to Tom Marchinek is 3 places ahead, so Tom Marchinek rounds off 4th for the AMS. Having a quick look as to how they score, it would be 30 points as it stands if they don't change positions for the entire race. 30 points for James Wright. 4th place would be 17 for Tom Marchinek. Compare that to the standings. They are separated by, I believe, 13 points, are they not? Yeah, they are indeed. So a 13-point gap. It would come down to who has the most wins. As it stands, it would go the way of Marchinek, I believe, because they would both have 2 wins apiece if James Wright won this one. It would go the way of Marchinek, though, because he's got an extra 2nd place on top of his 2 wins. So, Tom Marchinek, P10, no score, 1st, 2nd, 1st. What a run, it must be said, from the British driver. James Wright, no score, 1st, 7th, 5th, 11th, 2nd. So 1 win and 1 other podium, which is a 2nd place. So James Wright is going to need Tom Martinek to fall behind the likes of Fernando Torres, Hess, Schattler, and Martin Blankensteiner, who is one that is going to want to work his way forward in this race as well. Taking a look as to the strategical element of this race, the pit window will open about 15 minutes into the race and will last for 25 minutes of this race. You can see there next to the driver's number is a orange column with a little 1 in it. That's how you can tell as to who and when people have come in to take their mandatory pit stop. They don't have to change tyres, but they do have to top up their fuel. So very short pit stop, short and sweet, because it is only a 40-minute race. Having a look in the live chat, we got the big man himself, James Parfitt, in the usual chat. Martin Blankensteiner, of course, watching along just alongside his POV. I'm sure we do wish you the best of luck in moving forward. We wish you the best of luck in the championship, and maybe you could salvage P3 along the way. Dominic Enigna nearly into the final couple of corners, now running his way into Blanchimont. They will take to the start at the endurance lane. They won't go at the Grand Prix lights. It's not like Formula 1 where turn 1 is at La Source. Turn 1 is down into Eau Rouge and up through Radion. Andrew Pike, of course, is in the YouTube chat as well. He's not joining us on track, which is a little bit boring, it must be said. But he's given us some good old race facts as per usual. For the old banter police, he would get fired by his chief constable, I'm sure, if it didn't go his way. You can see very close to comfort Sir Smoggy, Dominic Aligna, as they line up 2 by 2 onto the pit straight. So Smoggy pulling off to the left-hand side just to let Ed Ligner through. As I say, this isn't where they're going to take the flag. It's going to be on that run in towards Eau Rouge and Radion to signal us underway one more time in season number 2. So Smoggy looks eager, very, very eager indeed. Guillaume Hamling needs to make some progress forward and win this race, essentially. Win this race, and Sir Smoggy finish 2nd or lower is how Guillaume Hamling can win the Season 2 Championship. Through La Source, and on the run to the line. Dominic Aligna controls the pace. We get ready. 40 minutes on the clock, 40 minutes left of Season 2. Round 6 here at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps is soon to get underway. It will be a German 1-2 in both the drivers and the manufacturers. A championship left to be decided.
Green light, go, go, go.
And for one more time in Season 2, we are underway on that run in towards Eau Rouge and Spa. Dominic Aligna leads them through. Single file, Sir Smoggy tucking in behind the McLaren of Martin, trying to work away through the Luxembourger of Guillaume Hamling. Through the Camel Kink and now up the Camel Straight. Already defensive goes Dominic Aligna. Using the slipstream though comes the Lamborghini of Guillaume Hamling. 2 by 2. Potentially they run their way in towards Lake Com. So Smoggy Beach on the outside. Got to be late on the brakes though versus Dominic Aligna. They're going to fight for the lead. Aligna hangs on just. And you can see that Guillaume Hamling trying to hang on versus the McLaren of Martin through Malmedy. It's still 1, 2, 3 and 4 as they start. Jack Southfield working his way up inside the top 5 as well. In towards Rivage for the first time is the Spaniard. Victor Martin going to go for the send. No, it's going to be the Brit of Jack Southfield. Outside line for Rivage. Is he going to make that one stick? Of course he's not. Conor Courtney had a bit of look to the inside as well. Pretty clean start all the way through the field. Very chaotic opening lap, and still 1, 2, 3 and 4 are our top 4 as they started this race. Down the hill towards Pool 1 for the first time, and you can see there Jack Southwood hammering the pressure onto the McLaren. Guillaume Hamling, though, this is not good enough for his championship. Needs to make the move. Very bit of interesting bit of chaos here. Just a bit further down, we ride on board Eric Larsen, the Norwegian, in the Lexus. He's got Schlattler in the Porsche just in behind them in the run towards Piff Path. Bit of pressure there from Schlattler and Wells just in behind this fight as well. Eric Larsen trying to hang on to P19. He is way far down for where he should be in that pro category. But good fights, good clean fights as well in the opening moments. 38 minutes and 18 seconds left of this race. We're not going to get many laps due to the long nature of Spa. Nearly just over 7 kilometers in length as well, I believe, is the case. Jack Southfield through Blanchimont, very close to the Spaniard of Victor Martin. Defensive goes the McLaren. Jack Southfield is there into the racing line. Sends Victor Martin in deep, though tries to get the up and does unfortunately fail just a little bit. That haunts his momentum. forces him to concede. So Smokey, or Ethan Strange actually with a fast lap. It's ebbing and changing, of course, with different points of when they started and how their timing started. But Ethan Strange up 3 places into P7 as it stands. Roger as well into P9, running you through the top 10 grid order for now. Dominic Ligner leads the way, and this is actually a fight. We'll come back to that in just a second, because Johnny McClory, the Irishman, trying to work a way past the Bentley, I believe, of Tom Marchinek, who has tumbled down the order. Unfortunately for him, that has been the case, with James Wright in 2nd place as well. It could be enough for him to win the championship. We'll confirm as the race goes on, but as it stands, we're just going to call it Johnny McClory down through the Camel Kink and up the Camel Straight, of course, going defensive. Does the Irishman. The Lexus pulls out to the left-hand side. That's the Norwegian of Eric Larson. There is Tom Marchinek, of course, just in front of them. That is Hess in that Porsche, trying to go the long way around. Bit of contact. McClory sent sideways, and that is going to invite Hess through. Side by side as they run their way in towards Malmedy. The Porsche allows Johnny McClory to go in deep, tries to get the up and under. Not quite close enough for a move down the hill into Ravage. A bit further up, though, they fight Tom Davidson versus Ethan Strange and that Team TSRC Aston Martin. Davidson, bit of a look in towards P1. That's surely not where you want to go for a move. He's thinking the wiser of it. They have got the Estonian of Slamfologia just in behind them as well. Out of the second left of the double gosh, I can never get over that. Tom Davidson not trying to get over the fact that Ethan Strange is in front of him, though. Inside line for Piff Paff. Still going to run side by side as they emerge their way through. Ethan Strange hangs on for now, but Tom Davidson with the up and under gets the better drive as they run their way through and towards Stavlo. Late on the brakes for the Estonian. Mercedes just in behind him as well. Tom Davidson stuck between a rock and a hard place, trying to attack and defend both at the same time. And that cannot be easy for the Porsche driver, though with a better line, it must be said, with a better run and that Porsche's slight straight line speed advantage versus the Aston Martin. Using the full extent of the track going into Blanchimont, we will have to keep an eye on the fight for the lead as well as that progresses. This is the fight we're focusing on now at the moment. Defensive goes Strange, outside line for Davidson, very late on the brakes, using the Porsche's advantage. Side by side, bit of wheel-to-wheel argy-bargy as they run their way through the bus stop chicane to round off what is going to be the 3rd lap of this race. Tom Davidson up into 7th, ahead now of the 88 machine of Ethan Strange. What a move it was. Really committed, really brave, really bold on the brakes and trying to clutch on to the fight of Conor Courtney, Jack Southwood just in front of them. Bit of chaos though. Slav Volodya getting caught up behind Ethan Strange, who made a bit of contact with Tom Davidson as they ran through the apex of turn number 1. 35 minutes, 8 seconds left of this race. Really not anywhere near an 1/8 of the way through. 12.5% of the way through this race. And this is the fight for the lead. Guillaume Houning needs a little bit more. He is hoping, really, that these two come together. I don't think on pure pace, the Lamborghini has what it takes to win this championship. So Smokey does seem perfectly poised. And of course, naturally, you're going to want to win. You're going to want to go out on a win. You want the win, the fast lap, the championship, all rolled into one nice, sweet little package, and that would probably be a pretty snazzy Christmas present, it must be said, for him. The Dane, Martin Blankensteiner, 2nd place in the AMP Championship. Bit of a spin just in the background. Was that of Tom Marchinek or of Fernando Torres? I don't know. Martin Blankensteiner, if he can get his way past James Wright, will be 2nd overall in the AM running. Might be able to gain some points relative to those around him. This is a direct fight for 2nd place in the AM Championship, though. Let's not forget Martin Blankensteiner, James Wright separated by nothing into this race. It is Tom Marchinek that they have to think of the better objective for. There is Slav Volodya, a big off running through P1. Unfortunately, sees him only P9 and tumbling down the order, it must be said. You can see in the bottom right, that is the more accurate position counter. P17 now 18 overall. And is going to see himself escape to the pit lane. And that is the last we're going to see of the Estonian in Season 2, unfortunately. Just over half an hour left to go. Victor Martin still hammering on some pressure in this fight for the podium. Through Blanchimont, the Spaniard doing his best job possible to stay in this fight. It's so crucial around a circuit like Spa to stay in that fight and just keep the pressure on. Stay in the slipstream. The more you fight, the more you lose it. And he's going to want to think of the better objective of maybe a potential race win. Trading fastest laps, though, the top 2 Germans of Dominic Ligner and Sir Smokey now going the way of the 716 Audi, who leads the way by just 0.7 of a second. Expect that fight to boil over as we get towards the closing stages of this race. But for Sir Smokey, the question must be posed. The fact that 2nd place with Guillaume Houning in 3rd is enough for him to win this championship. He is doing enough. He doesn't need to take risks. Any risks now could put him at a massive disadvantage versus the Luxembourger of the 351 Lamborghini. And he doesn't want to risk that at all. Does he settle for second? Does he push for the race win? And does that alleviate any pressure off Dominic Aligna? Does he know what Sir Smokey is doing? What's going through his head? There's Jack Southfield, though, making a fool of himself through Lecom, bit late on the brakes, ruining his momentum as he now flicks to the right through Malmedy and losing a couple of car lengths off the two fighting for the podium. Right now, 5th place for Jack Southfield. He needs what is, doing some quick maths, 11.5 points. And as it stands in 5, he's scored 16. Jack Southfield can get away with as low as 9th in this race and still get himself inside the top 3 in the championship. So we'll see what remains to be seen. Is he going to make a mistake? Is he going to make a fool of himself? How close this race is, how varied the pit stop strategies can be as well. Do not count a single thing out whatsoever. Yellow flags, of course, with multiple people having different offs, back to green flag running through this particular sector. Don't really know where to lay eyes on at the moment. This is the fight, as we say, the fight for the lead. Dominic Aligna versus Sir Smokey. Nothing really materialising at the moment into Blanchimont. Sir Smokey, very, very close though. The closest, arguably, he has been all race long. Is the fellow German going to go defensive? Yes, he is. Sir Smokey forced into his initiative. Trying to go to the outside line, trying to get the up and under again as they run through the second part of the chicane. And all this is doing is inviting Guillaume Hamling, Victor Martin, Jack Southfield, Connell Courtney back into the mix. Is Sir Smokey going to want to try and clear Aligna as soon as possible? Maybe having a bit of a look maybe towards Les Sources. Not quite close enough for the offensive manoeuvre. Still half an hour left to go in this race. Still a long way for him to go and still a lot of opportunities left for him to unpack for a 1.8 second gap and a defending Aligna. Well, maybe it's not what Sir Smokey wants. Maybe he wants to work with Aligna, get away from Hamling. Bit of a wide line though, cutting the crest of Radion for Sir Smokey. Aligna is going to want to try and keep that race lead. He sees still Sir Smokey as a threat and will defend it. And the more the Audi defends, the more Guillaume Hamling gets reeled in onto the rear end of these two in front. Victor Martin, no, not doing him any favours, looking to the right-hand side. Not quite close enough as they emerge into the foreground of shot at Lecom. Jack Southfield maybe putting him under a bit of pressure also. Being second place in a 3-car train, never ever easy. And if Guillaume Hamling does in fact close up, which he has been able to do through sector 1 by about 2.5 tenths of a second, bringing that gap back down to 1.5, visibly closer. I do personally like to use visual markers as opposed to the delta, because numbers on a screen don't really mean much. It's more the visual aspects that you can try and take advantage of. You know, you see 3 seconds, you see 5 seconds, you don't really know what the massive difference in that is. You can't see that gap. But for Guillaume Hamling, he can see how close Sir Smokey is. He can see how much progress he's making. And he can see that lap by lap, the more Dominic Aligna tries to defend, the closer he gets and the closer he potentially gets to the Season 2 Pro Championship. Sir Smokey is not going to be liking this narrative so far of this race, of the fact that Guillaume Hamling might be closing in. That gap re-stretches though to 1.961 seconds. So it's going to need a bit more battling between Sir Smokey and Aligna for the chasing pack behind to close the gap. Once again, very close as they run in towards Blanchimont, practically pushing the Audi is the Mercedes, the 284. Is he close enough for a move? Is Aligna going to go defensive, or is Sir Smokey going to commit to the inside? That's the space that's filled by the Audi. Outside line for Sir Smokey. Again, not quite close enough to go for the move, or not quite committed enough to go around the outside, though wide goes Aligna. Might give Sir Smokey the edge in towards turn number 1 once more to round off the 5th lap and on to the 6th. Not going for the dive in towards turn 1, and the more he does that, the more he backs out, the more the chasing pack behind closes. Victor Martin giving Guillaume Hamling a couple of licks. Might be getting a little bit maybe frustrated for Martin. Maybe he is quicker of the two, but maybe he's scared to go for the move in the fear that they could lose out this fight for the chance for this fight for the race lead. So Victor Martin doesn't maybe want to go for that move, but another part of him is going to want to try and force the group to catch, and that's exactly what he's going to go and do. Guillaume Hamlin defensive to the right hand side. Is Victor Martin going to try and sell his nose? Still got it there, side by side as they run their way through the fight for third, allowing Jack Southfield to close, losing time to the front two, of course. But Victor Martin wants to lead the charge, wants to get the pack onto the back of that fight for the lead. And on the run downhill and towards Ravage, Jack Southfield once again having a look to the outside, might box the McLaren in, not quite able to, as has been the sort of the theme of this race, is people going for moves that they can't quite actually complete, and sort of teasing us a little bit, keeping us on the edge of our seats. Through the left of, we're on the first left into the second apex as you dip back down the hill towards Piff Paff. Still focusing on the fight for third, of course. Pit window is open for the next 14 minutes and 40 seconds. They can come in between now and any time of those 14:40. Long pit lane here at Spa though, so you do want to hit the nail on the head when it comes to pit lane strategy, because you do not want to mess it up. If you underfuel, you've got a long trip through pit lane, because it's not just the Grand Prix pits, it's not just the endurance pits, it's not one or the other, it's both. You drive your way through the Grand Prix, drive your way through the endurance, stop in your pit box, and then emerge at the top of the hill at Raidillon. So a long way to go at 60 or 80 kilometers an hour, still very slow either way, and you're going to be losing a ton of time. So that's why you also have to be quite careful in terms of your track limits exploitations. Don't want to be chewing off more than you can handle, because 3 warnings and you get yourself a drive-through penalty, which is disastrous here at Spa on ACC. So an error of caution for a lot of drivers. The gap between Sir Smokey and Guillaume Hamlin growing to 2.5 seconds. Fight a little bit further back though. Quinten van Wingenden, the lone Nissan GTR, getting passed by the Norwegian of Erik Larsen in that Lexus. A very, very mean looking car in the black, red and white. Basic colours. The matte paint job of that, of course, does lend itself to make it look nice and beefy. And of course that is the case. That's Jack Southfield making, again, another fool of himself at the crest at Raidillon, cutting over the track limits and picking himself up a warning, I'm sure. Side by side as they run their way up, they come straight in towards Lecom. Victor Martin having a look to the left hand side by side as well for the race lead just in front. Has Sir Smokey been able to get himself in front? We'll come back to that in just a second. Victor Martin soars his way up into third place, though it's not done just yet. Jack Southfield reclosed the gap. Guillaume Hamlin back to the right hand side as they run their way through Malmedy. Still side by side for the race lead. Sir Smokey trying to force Dominic Ligner into a submission. Outside line for Ravage for Victor Martin. Off camber though, that invites Guillaume Hamlin to still have a look. Outside line for Speaker's Corner, No Name Corner, Jackie X, whatever you want to call it. Southfield trying to find the gap on the inside and fill it with his Aston Martin V8 Vantage. Not quite able to. Downhill, Puon. Victor Martin up into third place. Guillaume Hamlin demoted to fourth. It might well be fifth as Southfield has a good old look to the left-hand side. I don't quite think he's close enough though, so Victor Martin is sailing off into the distance. Interested to know how the fight at the front ended though between Dominic Ligner and Sir Smokey. We'll have to come back to that in a second. 4 cars in this fight for the podium. Victor Martin, Guillaume Hamlin, Jack Southfield and Conor Courtney, all 4 of them all hungry for that podium. Guillaume Hamlin though a little bit more hungry than others. He's the one in the fight for the championship. And an update, Sir Smokey 4/10 clear of Dominic Ligner, the fight out in front. We're going to cut to that now, and you can see with 24 minutes and 30 seconds left to go, the championship leader extends his championship lead by a further 6 points by taking the lead ahead of Dominic Ligner, who is not going to leave him alone. He's going to want to take that win back off the championship leader, who's looking for his 2nd win of the season. Having a look as to how Dominic Ligner has done in a short run. Of course, as I say, joined us in Monza, got a P9, which isn't where he wanted to finish, didn't do him justice. 2nd place last time at Indianapolis, so looking for better and better the more races he can beat in, and to get a win is the only way to do that. Jack Southfield, Conor Courtney both into the pit lane from what was 5th and 6th in this race. That promotes Tom Davidson in the Porsche up into now 5th place. Both of them into the pits, hoping maybe that Victor Martin and Guillaume Hamlin start to fight a little bit more, and that can allow them to get that undercut. The undercut around Spa is fairly prominent because you do need those tyres up to temperature, etc, etc. And getting those fresh tyres around a very demanding circuit like Spa is going to make the difference, even if it is only a difference of what is now 17 minutes. It's still a difference. A difference is a difference at the end of the day. And when it comes to the fine margins of motorsport, you cannot be leaving anything on the table. Oh, bit of a slide there from Guillaume Hamlin going out of No Name Corner, getting his wheel onto that AstroTurf, and it is very slippery. While yes, these GT cars do have traction control and the anti-lock braking system, no amount of assist can save you from the sudden change in grip that happens when you brake on the not necessarily serrated AstroTurf, but definitely slippery. It's shiny, it's slippery, and especially when it gets wet, it's going to be very slippery. But a lot less grippy than the tarmac, let's put it that way. And when you're in the acceleration zone, like you are going through No Name Corner, while it is a mid-speed corner, you are still accelerating. And when you put the power down, the rear wheels don't really know what to do with themselves, so they just spin. And when you've got the difference with the right-hand side tyre spinning and the left-hand side having perfect grip, you've got that unevenness, and you're going to spin, which is exactly what Guillaume Hamlin did there. So it goes to prove that Spa is very much a driver's circuit. You have to be on it. Consistency is key around the Ardennes circuit. Into the pit lane comes the McLaren of Victor Martin, rounding off lap number 8. Guillaume Hamlin does not follow him in and stays out for another lap, hoping maybe to go for the overcut. Tom Davidson also in. Is Ethan Strange going to follow him as we approach the halfway mark in this race? 21 minutes and 30 seconds left to go. Oh, bit of controversy in the YouTube chat. We've got Chaz Meister saying, am I the only one who doesn't enjoy GT3 at Spa? See, I can understand that perspective. I think that the racing you get can be very good, but Spa as a circuit can be quite overused, particularly in the world of iRacing. Spa is almost on every calendar, and it's in every series as well. So it's a case of, yeah, it does get a little bit old sometimes. GT3s as well are cars that you see a lot of. It's probably the most common combination is GT3s at Spa, so I can see as to why it can sort of not be enjoyable. Maybe to drive particularly. I do personally love to drive GT3s at Spa. I like to drive any circuit, any car here at this circuit. It's just fun, it's a challenge. Had to do it on GT Sport in Nissan R32s in the wet, which was funny. Managed to win that race. Won both races actually. We had 2 races that night. Managed to do quite well. Won the championship that day as well. But anyway, I'll stop blowing smoke. But yeah, I think it's a good circuit. And Andrew Pike does agree. It's a challenge to make a lap, let alone be on pace, for sure. Being consistent and being quick are 2 very different things. The best will be both. The good will only be one or the other.
Still a long way to go.
Consistency over pace, though, is probably the preferable ideal. Jack Southfield, though, with the undercut. There now is Victor Martin leaving the pit lane of that McLaren. Jack Southfield able to get the undercut and still with the momentum is going to grow that gap very wide. His outlap was sensational to get him now a good few car lengths ahead of Victor Martin. That remains to be seen. What is going to happen versus the Lamborghini of Guillaume Hamlin? Is Jack Southfield going to get himself from what was 5th to 3rd purely on an undercut strategy? So what we're getting told is that Southfield is with the potential no tyre change strategy to gain time. In the world of Assetto Corsa Competizione, it's a case of, unless they do have to change tyres. I don't know the legality. I don't think they have to change tyres. I don't think they have all season long. But maybe that's been the quick way to go about things. I know in the world of ACC is that the tyre changing is locked at 30 seconds. That is the minimum pit time. And you can change fuel while or top up your fuel while they're changing the tyres, which means that usually it's capped at 30 seconds for a pit stop. If you remove the change of tyres and just fuel up, you are going to save yourself a good sort of 20 odd seconds. Mandatory fuel with a fixed time of 25 seconds. So a 5-second gain by not taking tyres is what we're being told. So the fixed time is 25 seconds, 30 seconds to change the tyres, which leaves that if you don't change them, you just fuel up for 25 seconds. And then if you don't change tyres, you gain 5 seconds, which is a good gain. And these GTs can very comfortably go the full distance of the race without a massive drop in terms of pace. Is it going to be 5 seconds? Jack Southfield will find out in 18 minutes and 4 seconds time. Speaking of those, Sir Smokey, Guillaume Hamlin, Christopher Marston and Chris Davis all into the pit lane on that last lap to bring them in for their final pit stops of not only this race but also of this season. Riding aboard with Dominic Aligna, who is trying to use the clear air to full advantage, maybe get the undercut. Are we going to see any more no tyre change strategies? It's more than a 5-second skill deficit to the cars ahead though. Yeah, no, fair enough. It's the ginger hair. It's more dense in terms of the hair follicles, and it does weigh him down just a little bit. And while it is a close cockpit, the gingerness it strikes out so much that it's causing him a lot of drag down the back straight and of course up the camel straight as well. Jack Southfield really is struggling. Guillaume Hamlin comes out ahead of Victor Martin though, straight on the defensive. Victor Martin looking to the outside line, got his nose ahead with that momentum of the undercut, able to get himself back into P5. Dominic Aligna into the pit lane. A race against time between himself and Sir Smokey. That is the fight we're focusing on. Ethan Strange up to second place, only provisionally of course, and is going to see himself tumble down the order probably, I would say, to P7, P8, sort of that area. This is why he is so short. I see. Victor Martin through P1. 16 minutes left to go. Of course, Quinten van Bingden fighting with Schlatter in the, or Schattler, I should say. There's no second L. That's the thing. Is as British people, we don't sort of make that connection. We don't fill in. We just fill in the gaps automatically. We'll come back to that in a sec because the Dutchman is looking to the right-hand side and does get himself ahead of Schattler. But that's the thing is when we're pronouncing the names, we try to make them sound better in our heads or sound easier to pronounce in our heads, and just sticking an L there makes it sound better. Or it might be because there's an L later on in the word. So instead of Schattler, it becomes Schlatter or Schlatter, whatever. I don't know. I'm rambling on, but whatever it is British people overcomplicating foreign pronunciations, which as a British commentator is a very difficult thing to overcome, it must be said. You know, when you get the Polish people, the Estonians, you know, you've got Slav Volodya, you've got Slovenians, not too recently actually, over the course of Monday and Tuesday on the FIA South European Cup of 2022. We had only one person from sort of the Western European end, and that was Pepe Gutierrez from Spain. The other person, Dominic Blyer, was from Poland, which is fair enough, but again, Polish people do have fairly sort of complicated names as it is. Dominic Blyer, thankfully, doesn't, the Triton racing driver. But then we also had the likes of a couple of people. We had I actually can't think of people off my head, but we had people from Slovenia, Macedonia. We'll come back to that in a sec because Sir Smokey looking to the outside of Dominic Aligna for the lead once again. The overcut didn't quite work for the German on his bid for his championship. Outside line again for Malmedy. This fight continues on. It will be the outside line for Rivage, but he's got his car ahead and will be able to take the racing line. The lead once again for the championship leader, and it could well be the second win of this season for Sir Smokey to round off his championship bid. But yeah, the Eastern Europeans, the Slovenians, the Slovakians, Serbians, Bosnians, they do have some quite complicated names, which is a British commentator, as I say. It's not easy. But again, that's just us being very scared. Not necessarily scared, I don't want to say scared, I do not want to get cancelled. But sort of taken aback by trying to pronounce anything foreign. Because it's complicated. I digress. We focus back on the racing action because that is what I'm here to do. And what you guys are here to watch. Victor Martin versus Jack Southfield, who is going to be struggling a little bit in terms of tyres with his no tyre strategy. Getting word that cuddles the bear. Slav Volodya did the crash in an unexpected spot strategy, and he was the first to finish. Unfortunately, did not see the checkered flag. He saw an ambulance first. Then anyone. So that's something. Speed run to the hospital. It worked for some form. Victor Martin very close to the rear end of Jack Southfield, who goes defensive to the right hand side, brings it back to the left though to open up the bus stop chicane for him. Victor Martin, though, gets underneath them because Jack Southwood goes in way too deep over the curb and is not going to lose one, but 2 places. Victor Martin and Guillaume Hamling worked their way through from 3rd now to 5th. The no tyre strategy could have worked for Jack Southwood, but he was his own Achilles heel. His left foot let him down in the end. Too late on the brakes into the bus stop, over the curb, and not the way that he would have wanted, as Andrew Pike well eloquently puts, a bit of a skill issue for Jack Southwood, which is, as Lewis McGlade would say, suboptimal. 2 minutes, 12 minutes, 50 seconds left. Still a long way to go. 20 seconds left, of course, of the pit lane, and we're still waiting for Velogia to come into the pit lane. While he is out of the race completely, so we won't be seeing him coming into the pit lane. Just means that we don't get the full grid of green sort of tower icons. The sim racing collective fell short of expectations. He fell short of his height as well. Unfortunately, it's not where we would have wanted to be in the whole height department. When it comes to his profiles, he's going to have to add a couple of inches to even have a chance. Buy some hair dye. Go to Superdrug or something. They do quite cheap hair dye, I'm sure. But I digress. We're ripping into Jack Southwood too much, but I'm allowed to. I get permission from the big boys to rip into him. So I'm always going to take the opportunity with both hands with that one. Speaking of ripping into people, though, Samuel Monley did so much that his PC unfortunately has broken. He has ended so many people's races and had his races ended so many times that his PC decided to give up and put him out of his misery. Eric Larson trying to put Johnny McClory out of his misery, or Tom Marchinek actually out of his misery in this fight for 12th. 3rd place in the championship is James Wright, who's just a couple of seconds ahead of Tom Marchinek. But the gap is 5.7 seconds. The gap in terms of places is not enough for James Wright to seal the deal in terms of the championship fight. Martin Blankensteiner, though, it must be said, has disappeared from the timing tower, so his any chance of taking the title is very slim and could very likely fall out of second, out of the top 3, maybe even further. So that is not ideal. Again, for Martin Blankensteiner. Fight still raging on out in front. Is Dominic Ligner hungry enough for this first win? He's seeing plenty of the rear end of Sir Smokey in front of him. Unable to get close enough, though, that Audi and its straight line speed and its slipstream down up the Camel Straight is keeping him in touch and very, very close indeed. Could be putting some pressure on Sir Smokey, who is definitely feeling it. Right-hand side defensive goes the Mercedes. Dominic Ligner pulls to the left-hand side to fight again for the lead. Outside line for Lecom if he can break late. Keep it brave, keep it bold, keep it brilliant. Maybe the inside line for the second part. And you can see there Sir Smokey trying to keep him honest. Gets the squeeze as they run in towards Malmedy. Maybe going for the up and under. Maybe going all the way around the outside goes Dominic Ligner. Still having to fight hard as they dip their way down in towards the off-cambered right-hander of Ravage. Very long way around the outside there. So having to play second fiddle, tuck back in behind does Dominic Ligner in his bid for the race win. Through No Name, trying to maximise his exit. Final 10 minutes of this race, of this season. And the fight for the lead, the fight for the championship still rages on between Dominic Ligner, Sir Smokey, Guillaume Hamling. Unfortunately, the more this race goes on, the more it seems doubtful that he is going to have to finish second in the Pro Championship. So close and unfortunately yet so far. Still putting that pressure on Dominic Ligner. Sir Smokey hanging on for the lead. Four-tenths of a second separate them as they exit curve Paul Ferrer and into the final sector. You can see riding on board with the Audi how close he is, how perilously close he is to the rear end of that Mercedes, and the straight line speed, the slipstream is working in his favour. It could come down to the final couple of laps. Not close enough in the braking zone. Right hand for the first lap of the chicane, then into the left to bring you back onto the pit straight. Only what I make to be 4 more laps, maybe 3 at the line. It's going to be very, very close. In towards they source, breaking at the 100 board. Maximise your exit. You can see picture the car in much later as Dominic Ligner to try and get the power down, to try and get as close as he can to the German of Sir Smokey just in front of him. You dip downhill in towards Eau Rouge. You've got to stay as close as you can. Can't get any moves done here. You've got to stay at a decent distance back still, though, to maximize the slipstream up over the crest of Radion. And Dominic Ligner very, very close. Could it be the lead? He was much closer than he was this time last lap. So Smoky still already defensive. Up the camel straight. Dominic Ligner pulls out very early to the left-hand side. Deja vu from last lap, though he has got a slight bit more of an advantage this time round. The German of Ligner, outside line, gets the job done. Up into the race lead, or is it? Again, Smoky to the inside. Malmedy, they are very close to contact as they run their way through, but Dominic Ligner just about hangs on straight to the right-hand side to defend in towards Rivage. Smoky outside line has to tuck in behind and falls to second in the dying moments of round number 6 here at the circuit of Francorchamps, and so Smoky still has a chance, but Dominic Ligner takes the helms, takes the reins at the front of the field, and the more they fight, you can see Victor Martin, Guillaume Hamling being reeled in bit by bit to this fight, and visibly very, very close indeed to this fight at the front. 7.5 minutes left to go, though. Time is well and truly not on their side, but Dominic Ligner with the pace advantage, it must be said, through P1, through Piff-Paff, gaining the crucial couple of car links that he might need to be able to hang on to the win. So Smoky, the win, second place, it does not matter. As long as it stays as it is, he will be your Season 2 Pro Champion. Talking of championships, Tom Martinek will be able to seal the deal in the AMS as well, provided it stays the same over in there. But the top 4 separated by what is now only 3 seconds. So Smoky doing his best to keep Dominic Ligner honest, but the pace of that Audi does seem to be fairly unmatched. Took pole position, of course, did the 716. But has since been under a world of pressure from those around him. Final 2-3 laps. Again, we have to wait and see as to what it's going to be. It's going to be very, very close, of course. Guillaume Hamling, P4. He needs to get ahead of Smoky, which is difficult in and of itself. He needs Victor Martin to get ahead of Smoky, and he needs to win this race to stand any feasible chance of winning the championship. While it's my job as a commentator to try and hype it up, and that is definitely the nail in the coffin for Guillaume Hamling. A mistake up the hill, through Eau Rouge, through Radion, nearly sending himself into the tyre barrier, losing a little bit of time, ends any chance I think he potentially had of winning the championship. Again, my job as a commentator, hype things up, make things sound interesting, and bring you the excitement. But at the same time, I don't want to lie to you. I don't want to push any false sense of hope to anyone that Guillaume Hamling could win this championship. Because in this race, it's gone the way of the German, of Smoky. He's been on top form, he's been on top consistency, and has shared a brilliant fight with Dominic Ligner out in front. But who knows, with 5 minutes left to go in this race, there is still a lot that remains to be seen. No other real fights happening on the circuit as it stands. The closest gap that I can personally see is between this fight here, Chris Davis versus Christopher Marston. Very, very close. Not as close maybe as Chris Davis would like. While this is a fight on track, it's not a fight in terms of glory or in terms of championship standings or points or anything like that. Christopher Marston leads the way in the AMS. You can see by the red number plate next to their name. Christopher Marston, James Wright, Tom Martinek, Johnny McClory, Shatler, and Fernando Torres to round off the 6 car Anfield as it stands. And unfortunately, for James Wright, it's not going to go his way in terms of the championship. While it was clutching at short straws, a 13-point deficit was going to be hard to close, but Tom Martinek doing everything he can to seal the deal and hang on to what has been... Well, I don't know. I don't know what to say about the AM Championship, in all honesty. I think that Martin Blankensteiner has been at the helm all season long. But Tom Martinek has been there as well. I mean, they finished first and second, both of them with a 1-2 each at Brands Hatch. Then first in round 4 for Martin Blankensteiner, second in round 4 for Tom Marcinek, P1 at round 5 and a DNF at last time out at Indy. They've been both on top form. It's just been the sense that Martin Blankensteiner has been able to stay in front for most of the season because of round 1 and round 2 not necessarily going the way of Tom Marcinek. Blankenstein has been able to stay in front and hang on to it. But when it's this close and when you DNF that late on in the season, for your second one of the season, you take the full brunt of that DNF. There's no drop scores to save you or anything like that. Blankensteiner, unfortunately, did spell the end of his championship charge last time out. And James Wright has been up there as well, a win and a second place. The top 3 in the championship have both been on top form. Alex Skinner as well, the only other person in the AMS to take a victory. MP5 in the Lexus RCF GT3. He's not joining us today, is the Team Ricky Monsters driver. Instead it's Chris J. Davis flying the flag in the pro category. Trying to get the up and under on Christopher Marston. Oh my word, flirting with disaster for nothing. This is just for track position, is this fight. So, yeah, well, Chris Davis is taking a bit too much risk, I think. Maybe allowing James Wright to close the gap. And I think what we worked out earlier, if it was first and 4th for James Wright and Tom Marcinek, it would go the way of Marcinek on count lap. So Tom Marcinek is going to need to make a spin or something to happen to have any chance. But it is going to be very close. 2.5 seconds between James Wright and potentially matching Tom Marcinek on points for the championship, which is as close as you can get it. Tom Davidson in P6 trying to close the gap on Jack Southfield, who is still struggling in terms of pace. Could have been a podium for the young Brit. Unfortunately, he was probably better off on a ginger scooter, was Jack Southfield, going around this circuit in terms of his pace over the course of the second stint. Made the mistake into the bus stop chicane, allowed Victor Martin and Guillaume Hamling both through into 3rd and 4th respectively, and now is being chased down by the Porsche of Tom Davidson into what is now the final lap of this race and of this season 2. I guess that works both ways, of this season 2 and of course of this season number 2. I just like that. My brain is just giving me weird stuff to talk about. I don't even know. I don't know. I do hope you're all enjoying back at home, and if you are, do make sure to subscribe to the JP Broadcasting channel, turn on the bell notifications as well, like the stream, comment, give your thoughts and feelings for this race, for this season overall. It's always good to look back and reflect on what this season has brought us, and it's been pretty much carnage, chaos, excitement, drama, whatever you want to sell it as, all season long. And now it comes down to the final 30 seconds. Chris Davis ahead of Christopher Marston in the fight for supremacy amongst the Chris's. It is at the moment going to go the way of the Bentley, but for what seems to be nothing. However, James Wright is closing in. That gap under a second onto the final lap. Could we see a change for the race lead? Has Chris Davis spoiled the party a little bit, maybe? We don't know. Again, we have to focus on Dominic Ligner, who should be crossing the line anytime soon. We do not want to miss Sir Smoggy cross the line also to seal his championship. 1 second ticks us down. The checkered flag is waved, and only a couple more corners left for this man, Dominic Ligner. 9th, 2nd, and now 1st in a half season of racing here for the Sim Racing Collective GT3 here on the PC on Assetto Corsa Competizione. Round 6 here at the Circuit de Spa Francorchamps is going to go the way of the German in the 716 Audi. One more corner left to go, then a short sprint to the finish to take the checkered flag for the final time in 2022. Dominic Ligner wins, and Sir Smoggy across the line in dominant fashion. Second place is all he needed to do to be your 2022 Season 2 Pro Champion here for the Sim Racing Collective. There goes James Wright very wide, and he's bottled the win and the championship along with it on the exit of Curve Paul Frere. Very easy to do. Nearly into the barrier. Chris Davis with the drive-through on that final lap as well. James Wright not falling behind his rival of Tom Marcinek, though not getting the race win that he potentially could have hoped for. Chris Davis now. And into the pit lane comes Chris Davis to, of course, serve his drive-through. He doesn't want to get the penalty. James Wright through the corner, head in his lap, in shame, with a puncture as well, maybe. I don't know, that rear right does look to be vibrating just a little bit. Plus 80 seconds for Chris Davis because he couldn't serve the drive-through. He gets a minute 20 penalty. That is harsh. Tom Marcinek, though, for the AMS, is going to win the championship ahead of James Wright and of Martin Blankensteiner as well. He is your 2022 season number 2 AM champion. Tom Marcinek, what a drive from the 27. Again, only needed third, did exactly what he needed to do to seal the deal. And after taking what has been 2 wins, 2 second places, and now a third, it's been a phenomenal season for the Briton. And he seals this season off again in great fashion on the podium. Waiting for the final couple to cross the line before we run you through the final couple of grid places. The final time tower for this season. We'll cut to that in just a second before we wrap up for the year, and hopefully we'll see you in the new year as well. After what was 17 laps of racing action here at Spa, it was Dominic Ligner that took victory and the fastest lap and a pole position, a triple whammy for the German. But all eyes on Seth Smokey, who takes the championship 2.5 seconds back off the Audi, and Victor Martin rounds off the podium. It was too little too late for Guillaume Hamling, P4 and second place in the championship for the Luxembourger, with Jack Saffield 5th and 3rd place in the championship. Then comes Davidson, Connor Courtney and Ethan Strange, 6th, 7th and 8th, with Christopher Marston and Eric Larson, your top 10. Then comes James Wright for 2nd place in the AM Championship, Tom Marcinek 3rd place in the AM Field, and 1st place in the overall championship. What a season it's been from the Bentley Continental GT3. Johnny McClory P13 with Quinton Van Bingeren and Schattler rounding off your top 15. Then comes Torres, Davis, Hess, Wells and Blankensteiner, your top 20, with Vlodger and Rodriguez rounding off the 22 car field that we had here today. Bittersweet for Blankensteiner this season. It was sheer domination up to a point, and then the last 2 rounds has really come undone for the Dane. Not what he would have wanted whatsoever. Unfortunately, ladies and gents at home, that is going to spell an end to the coverage of not only today, but also this season. It's been a privilege to talk you through the last 6 weeks. My name has been Zach Sweeney to give you all the action here on the JP Broadcasting channel. It's been Kieran Sharp behind the scenes to deliver the fantastic production feed, always making sure we deliver on all of the action possible over every single race that we get. We've had 7 races, 6 rounds, and 2 phenomenal championships. We look forward to 2023 to see what is in store, to see what the future holds. But until then, ladies and gents, you take care, you enjoy your Christmas, you enjoy your New Year's, and we'll hopefully see you soon.